Alright, hello everyone. Well, the long-awaited epic battle with the aptly named NotSoErudite is concluded. O frabjous day, Kalu Kalay. And since it's very out of the ordinary from my usual fare, it bears some explanation. Some of you appear to be under the impression that a productive and extensive conversation was ever in the cards. I'm going to spend a minute or two putting that out of your mind. This is the interaction which precipitated my conversation with Erudite today. She posts here. Watch, and I still have no idea what the hell this means. Watch President Sunday, hypocrite for virtue. I don't know what that means, a hypocrite for virtue. Doesn't matter. It just annoys me. But I ask, care to elaborate how I'm a hypocrite? She replies with a quote tweet. Nope, not a quote tweet. Never mind. I tell a lie. She replies, thank you, Yepper Bepper. If you want to come on stream for 6 minutes... Oh, wait, hang on. Okay, so this one says here, mate, you ended the call seemingly because you didn't want to materially help those people. I responded to this in my follow-up. She replies, Yepper Bepper, if you want to come on stream for 6 minutes, I can say the same thing to you live. That being, actually, I have no idea what you just said or what you're going to repeat to me live. And then there's a quote tweet somewhere, because this was repeated somewhere. Said something to the effect of, let's see here. Oh, maybe she deleted that. There was a following tweet in which she made some really bizarre statement to the effect that silence was the best response or something to something. I wasn't entirely clear. Anyways, fast forward a little bit. In DM, she again refuses to clarify at all, insisting again, come on stream for this. And rather than just explain, she decides to make a production of it. Reading some more political theory. By the way, I watched a little bit of her political theory stream. Oh my god. It's just watching a really bad breakdown of Hannah Arendt, who's already a little bit on the flimsy side as far as theorists go. It was bad. But at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, I am chatting with President Sunday about how he's a hypocrite. So this was not about having a conversation or settling some confusion or anything. This was a production. This was content generation. This was, ooh, there's a little bit of friction happening here. I'm going to jump on and dismember this person, which is why there was this extensive production about bad faith, etc., etc. There was never going to be a conversation. So that's that, really. She probably didn't watch your original vid. I think she did. I think she's just not very bright. I think she's kind of dim. She's a very incurious, lazy person. And that's that. Oh my god, I was metalworking today and this got me so hyped for the Vosh debate. Is there a Vosh debate happening? Not with me, I hope. See here, I think she planned to take you down for a short clip. Oh, she absolutely did. And if I played along, like that would have been the case, because she would have lined up some things where I say exactly what she needs me to say. Um, just being polite, and then she would just give her follow-up. This is not an honest person. Sunday looked like an utter unhinged barking fool with erudite today. What would you have me do? Just give her free reign to just spout invidious shit into the ether endlessly? You don't have polite conversations with a venomous snake. You cut their head off. You should have just engaged honestly. There was no engaging honestly. I'm sorry, but you guys are out to lunch. If you think any of this was ever going to be like a little tea party where we just let's just agree to disagree. Yes, I think I see what you're saying. That wasn't going to happen. That wasn't going to happen at all. Why do you think she had the definition of bad faith prepped for recital at Go? Like, you guys gotta... You gotta be a little bit... The shouting was a bad idea. Do you know why I shouted? I shouted because she was speaking into her microphone and wouldn't stop. If I did not shout, I would not get a word in. That's how this works. I'm sorry, there's no moderator here. All of this could have been handled through text. I didn't want a conversation with this person. I am not interested in this. This is boring. This is so boring. I don't want to have an endless conversation with erudite about a text. About a tweet, sorry. Like, who wants to waste their time with that? You could have thrown that definition back in her face if you handled it calmly, though. You would not have been able to. I'm telling you right now, you dream. It wasn't a debate. You dream. I'm sorry. That's not how this works. That is not how this works. Seems like she threw out the hypocrisy bit as just a thoughtless dunk, particularly since later in conversation she opened not by actually explaining the supposed hypocrisy. Well, she went for a bad faith thing. She was trying to make this a whole production, where she takes me down. That's what that was. I'm sorry. The convo was an optics disaster. No matter what, you're going to be thrown into the fire. Careful. Just careful. Just because it offends your sensibilities does not mean it's an optics disaster. It's okay. Really. Why is your thumbnail so personal at ad hominem? It's not ad hominem. This is something else. This person is very stupid. She doesn't know what an ad hominem is. An ad hominem is a bad thing when it is used as an argument. It's a fallacy because you are using a description, a negative description of your interlocutor to invalidate what they're saying. It is not fallacious if you are using it as a descriptor based upon what they are saying. Because I'm not using that as an argument. I'm like, wow, you're actually saying that? You must be an idiot. I am breaking absolutely no logical rules to do that. Sharon suffering from the sunk cost fallacy? What's sunk cost fallacy? I don't have to talk about this at all. I've got other stuff lined up. A bit heavy-handed on the madam, though. It's on brand. Look. But the fedora thing, we're gonna have to just come to peace with that. You like the madam? Well, we can't all have as refined taste as you. Of course I levied personal attacks. The premise of the conversation was a personal attack. Like, What do you think the scandal is? Oh my god, President Sunday was mean to somebody? I've been getting into fights with people since I started my channel. I do video essays and I do theory. I also argue with people. I am not a quiet book club. It's cringe as fuck to bring up people's personal lives when you can't engage. I actually could engage. Do you know why I brought up Erudite's degree? Because the only reason why she characterizes herself now as a psychometrician, who is, by the way, somebody who administers things like personality tests, is because that was her fallback for justifying her description of herself as a professional, what did she say? A mental health professional in her defense of Dr. K, because that was just juicy content that she could situate herself on the side of for the sake of her own growth. That's why. That's why it's funny after when she's the one giving an extensive description of bad faith and trying to accuse someone else, that she fudges her credentials in order to win an internet argument. There's off topic, but what's your favorite tea? Earl Grey. By itself. No cream or sugar. Here's the thing. I'll tell you exactly why. When she came into that conversation, she refused to just lay out, hey, here's how you're a hypocrite. Why was she refusing to do so? Two reasons. The first is that she knows already that I've responded to the one that she was going to fall back on. And she has nothing to embellish it with, as we saw. It was just a repeat of the Rose Wrist point, somehow dumber, impressively. At least with the Rose Wrist was being rash. He wasn't paying attention. He was being dumb. Okay? He was being dumb in the moment. Rose Wrist is not actually essentially dumb. Erudite is dumb. She made it worse. She actually... Oh my god. That was something else. Money has no impact on politics. And if you make Nick Fuentes' reach as small as possible, he grows. Like Obi-Wan after you strike him down. It was... She basically argued against deplatforming. There is an argument to be made about a certain kind of deplatforming. Like, this weird obsession with... Like, typically, especially around the 2016 era, the deplatforming thing was quite literally, don't allow someone like Milo Yiannopoulos to enter university. And to a certain extent, I agree with this. But this became sort of a bit of an obsession, and there were these big events where some figure who made some untoward remark or something, when this wasn't in the popular culture yet, was being, to all appearances at the outside, being bullied from going up onto the stage. And this represented a tremendous propaganda opportunity for people like Sargon Avocado, who built their careers making content off of the outrage around this. We're not talking about the same thing. We're talking about literally removing the ability of someone like Stefan Molyneux, who's a quintessential example, Nick Fuentes, Lawrence Southern, etc., to sidestep their inability to access institutions like universities and mainstream media, etc., by using social media like YouTube. Stefan Molyneux disappeared because he was actually squeezed out. One of the reasons why people like Nick Fuentes and Lawrence Southern have not been squeezed out in the same way is because people like Destiny and others who haven't been squeezed out give them access. They do not interact with Destiny because they love Destiny so much. They don't. Think about this for a second. If Destiny's beating them all in debate so often, why are they inviting themselves into the lion's den over and over and over again? It benefits them. They recognize this. This is obvious. This is so obvious. She did this unfathomably stupid thing where she forced some pretend dichotomy of money is everything in politics versus money literally means nothing, and she took the latter of the two extremes. Yeah. And I'm sure you've seen The Boys. Like, I don't get my political philosophy or my understanding of how politics works or of how uh, information dissemination works or how indoctrination or radicalization works from a comic book show produced by Amazon, uh, much less from the mouth of the Nazi character. Like, Christ. So no, I'm sorry. If you think that we were going to have a pleasant conversation, you dream. She was lining that up to bring down a hammer. She just had so many tells even going into it, like the idea. So you're saying they're basically using him as a useful idiot Sunday? He's not an idiot. He knows what he's doing. He just doesn't care. But yeah, he's useful to them. Absolutely. Is that a fact? You're darn tootin' it is. And now Milo is doing jewelry infomercials for elderly people. Really? Scroll up a little bit here. Sunday as a Destiny viewer, you should know she was using loads of Destiny stock phrases. Yeah, it's not even just Destiny stock phrases. They're ubiquitous now. You can... I know the game at this point. These people all talk the same. She actually is identical to Demon Mama at her earliest and her worst. Demon Mama actually does have some substance to her, so she outgrew that a little bit. Like, don't worry, don't get me wrong. She says silly stuff and she gets into silly fights, but there's something there. You can actually have an interesting conversation with Demon Mama, especially when you're not doing so in front of an audience where they're expecting you to tear each other apart, and there's pressure to do so on both sides. Erudite's dumb as a brick. Like, that was incredible. I don't think I've interacted with someone as insufferable as that in my life. That was like Madame Umbridge. Or not Madame Umbridge. That was like Professor Umbridge if she was trying Dolores Umbridge, is that it? It was like Dolores Umbridge. If she was trying to be like, what is that even called? Like, what is Yeppers Beppers? What kind of aesthetic is that? It's weird and creepy. Let's see. Here's a perfect illustration. Oh, Demon Mom is not practically empty. Demon Mom is reckless. She's not a genius. Don't get me wrong. Like she's not a brilliant political theorist, but I've spoken with her. She does herself a disservice in terms of how she portrays publicly. She's actually not stupid at all. I can't like I I can't prove that to you because she's done tremendous damage to herself in public. But having spoken to her off a little bit, I don't think she's dumb at all. Again, eh. What was the tactic of attacking her credentials? That wasn't a tactic. That was a dig. That was a dig because she very recently fudged her credentials in her defense of Dr. K. So, what's your response to people saying you're a hypocrite for being chummy with Chud, who has Mr. Girl on a lot? I don't think I'm really chummy with Chud. I think the thing with Chud is he didn't build his audience dealing with these people. He's not at that scale. There's a bunch of things. Um, he's also much more dubiously situated. Like, I don't attack Nick Fuentes on the same lines I attack Destiny, because it's kind of obvious. Like, Destiny was never an advocate for these people. Um, he was never an advocate against himself, clearly. Like, to accuse ChudLogic of being a hypocrite would be kind of silly. ChudLogic's been open and honest from go that he runs a tabloid channel and he's there to milk drama content and make memes and do that. Like, and I disagree with some of it. She defended Dr. K. Why? Just to give an illustration of how stupid Erudite is, and I have no problem using that language at this juncture because she is a snake. In her conversation with ChudLogic, which I think is actually the one in which she tried to fudge her credentials as being like a professional mental health worker. She's like a grad student or something. She said, and I think I'm actually making a verbatim quote here, you can take the goods from a discipline, in this case Ayurveda, even if they are arrived at by luck, or even if there's a lack of any kind of method or something like that. Dear children, do you know what a discipline without a method is called? Not a discipline. That's the method is the discipline part. If there's no method, there's no discipline to what? It's a discipline to a method. You enter into a discipline by being disciplined. You learn methodological standards, you learn to adhere to them. If those don't exist, then they don't exist. And in addition to that, another reason why I'm a little bit more forgiving of ChudLogic in conjunction with his honesty is that his earlier interactions with Mr. Girl were largely over their shared animosity towards Dr. K on those grounds. I also don't think Mr. Girl feeds into the Mr. Girl's not really alt-right. Mr. Girl's something else. It's a different situation. This is off key, but have you read Igor Vidal? I have not. Okay, just to be clear, you understand how tarnished your reputation is at this point, right? Why? Because I yelled at someone who defends a crackpot pseudoscientist, or purveyor of pseudoscience, rather, and a disgraced streamer who regularly chums it out with Lauren Southern and Nick Fuentes, who's been banned off of his largest platform. What's my scandal exactly? I appear to be surrounded by people with active and sometimes confirmed allegations of sexual assault, sexual harassment, pedophilia, etc., etc., etc. Abetting Nazis, transphobes, bigots. Why is my reputation the dumps? Because I yelled at Erudite? I'll live. It's okay. And for the record, I do think Chud is a little bit irresponsible. I don't think Chud has done something to the effect that he is specifically condemnable for that, and I've argued with him on this point. But anyways, welcome to the channel nonetheless. Dr. K is extremely dangerous. He really is. What's that snotty Trudeau line? He said, like, booger eating something. I can't quite remember. Let's see. Yeah, no worries, Marty Moose. Release the Demon Mama tapes. I don't record conversations. I haven't had that many conversations with Demon Mama. My interactions with her are sparse. What I've observed, though, is she actually has some, like, there's a germ of a good argument in a lot of what she does that is stretched way too thin. She goes way too hard. She picks fights with people too recklessly. Um, and she gets a bit sloppy. And the debate format itself is not really good for getting like really nuanced things out in the open for discussion, which is her fault because she chooses to bring them up in that context. So anyways, anyways, it's really weird how like Destiny's orbit is so consistently duplicitous. Like it's weird. We have Erudite fudging her credentials and just generally engaging in scummy snake-like behavior. That's more because she's dumb. We have we have this we have the disgusting perspective philosophy going after people for drug addiction and other things. Um, we have book smarts proudly declaring that he helps rich kids um, artificially outperform poorer students because they can pay for him to fudge their papers. Um, like when I compare these and I compare it like the Vosh Circle, which is a bunch of jerks who are full of themselves getting into fights all the time, but for the most part not actually being anywhere near that terrible. And don't get me wrong, they've done bad stuff, but this is like ubiquitous. I don't know, something's up. Mr. Girl's documentary on Dr. K is actually pretty good. Give the devil his due. You're not wrong. Hey Echo, how are you doing? Did you miss anything? Oh, just me ranting about the, not ranting, just a little bit of ranting. Just going over the conversation earlier. Are you on stream, Echo? Love to get your opinions on things. Hey, why are you calling Echo a slime ball? You don't don't call Echo a slime ball. Echo's not a slime ball. Eiko is a wonderful person with a lovely singing voice and a very, very perplexing perception of time. Also, general rule, don't abuse each other in chat. I do ban people for that. Giving you a warning this time. Sunday, no, it isn't weird. It's all dominated by, I'm assuming you meant weird. It's all dominated by clout chasing and exploiting an audience that is willing to be lied to. Yep, sure is. It's funny she mentioned the boys. She would absolutely be a minor villain in that. President Sunday, what is your favorite crystal or gem? Kind of partial to Lapis Lazuli. Reminds me of the shield from Ocarina of Time. Oh, frick, the debate with Bogardus. Thanks for reminding me. I have to go over that. Eiko says, I want to talk to you about the erudite talk when I'm not stoned. Fair enough. Alright. I wonder if there's any literature on the effects of long-term sustained outrage on mental faculties. Destiny seems like a great test subject. I'm sure there will be in a few years. If there isn't already. What's your opinion on Destiny in general? There's nothing there. There's nothing to him. Erudite will either have 1 million followers next year or be ran out of the business. She's a Scarface of streamers. I hope she has 1 million followers by the end of the year. That'd be great. I would love to have that in my repertoire. Would you ever do a review on Benjamin Boyce's recent interview? I think I heard about that. Stop fake yawning when interacting with people you don't like. What would be the purpose of fake yawning? I'm tired. Oh, see, I'm just thinking about it. I'm yawning. It's the weirdest things people fix onto. It's like I'm using a voice changer and I fake yawn. Picture this. Imagine somebody who just has a deep voice and is tired. What's with the fake yawn accusation? Because it's desperation. These people are not smart. I should just start deploying the tactical yawn. In fact, I should come into every debate with like, "Hey, how's it going? Fuck my voice changer." There we go. Better. Ask the body language channel guy. His insights are amazing. Really? People, oh yeah, everybody accuses me of using a voice changer. It's very strange. I don't think my voice is that deep either. Like, it's deep. It's objectively very deep. But, like, Christopher Lee exists, right? Like, I don't have the deepest voice in the world. Although I could have the deepest voice in the world. In all of Middle-earth, in fact. I don't know, I can't do it. I have excellent range. You are a lance, and I am your destroyer, haha! Anyways, to be totally honest with you, I hate talking to people. Like, I had to talk to Erudite today, but I did have to talk to Erudite like that. Because if I did not, I would have been crushed. This is how it works. I'm sorry. Dear children, come to terms with the fact that not everybody is good in this world. Some people are out to get you. And sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. Deal with British accent. Why did you call her a lout? That's an excellent question, actually. I don't know why on earth that is in my vocabulary. I think for whatever reason, the line from Aladdin where Jafar refers to the genie as a big blue lout. It's like, don't talk back to me, you big blue lout! That's like stuck in my memory and it just popped. How high are you? I'm never high. Or I'm always high. Something's going on. Are you drunk? Nope, this is kombucha. I'm actually quite sober. Why are you asking me if I'm drunk? Okay, anyways. So much for that. We've spent enough time talking about that. There are actually interesting things to look at right now. Among other things, Andrewism has made something that is directly in my wheelhouse that I am excited for. And no, it's not this. This is definitely not what it is. Let me pull it up here. Problem with hierarchy. I think I'll need some tea for this one. The pollen's not going easy on me. I'll be back in like 2 minutes while I just boil the water. And we'll go over this. And then I have apparently a honorable mention in Bad Empanada's video on the clout human centipede. When it... He's anything if not subtle. It's kind of interesting that you take basically the opposite approach to Hanlon's razor. You're much quicker to attribute to malice than you are to stupidity. That's because the actions that Erudite took are markers of intent and of malice. And you gotta learn the science. The devil is old. If you would know him, be old as well. Or I think that's how it goes. Ikum bokum. Ah, and that will be the waiting music. Excellent choice. I am proud of my followers. They are smart. They have taste. They are all very good looking and probably smell wonderful. Okay. Let us find this. And thank you for the $10, by the way. Alright, y'all ready for this? Make it so. Alright. So. Monsieur Andrewism. Oh, and thank you very much for the $10, Dietrich. I appreciate that. Alright, here we go. The Problem of Hierarchy by our yellow friend here. Anarchism is sometimes defined by its opposition to unjustified hierarchies, but this definition can be damagingly incomplete. Here's a quick rundown of what exactly hierarchy is and why anarchists oppose it, alongside a few misconceptions. Authority, expertise, force, unjustified hierarchies, parenting. Okay, this could actually be interesting. Is there a bibliography? No, that's fine. It's a YouTube video, doesn't necessarily need one. But I would like to see citations or something approximating thereto in the video. We will see. His stuff's generally good. I disagree with a lot of it, but it's good and it's interesting. I've never, or at least I haven't in memory, seen a Saint Andrewism video. I guess it's just called Andrewism now. Seen an Andrewism video that has, even if I think it's wrong, has been dealing with dumb questions. So I'm looking forward to this.
Opposition to hierarchy.
Oh no, we missed the intro. There we go.
If it's one thing that anarchism is known for, it would be its opposition to hierarchy.
Is that loud enough for you guys? Let me know how the audio is, okay? Worst possible outcome is you agreeing with everything in it. If I do, though, I'll salvage it for you. Because that's how I roll. This is a fluff piece? Oh, is it? Don't be a fluff piece, St. Andrewism. Alright, let's do it.
If it's one thing that anarchism is known for, it would be its opposition to hierarchy. But what is hierarchy exactly? And why do we oppose it?
A little louder?
That's
Jesus Christ, okay. It can't be louder than me is the thing, right? Otherwise it's going to be really annoying. Here we go.
If it's one thing that anarchism is known for, it would be its opposition to hierarchy. But what is hierarchy exactly? And why do we oppose it? That's exactly what I'm trying to clarify in this
video.
Louder,
please. Louder still. Why is this video so quiet? Good God. I have it up at maximum. Alright. We're going up. If I come back and the audio's, like, ridiculous after this, I'm going to be really annoyed with you in particular.
If it's one thing that anarchism is known for, it would be its opposition to hierarchy. But what is hierarchy exactly? And why do we oppose it? That's exactly what I'm trying to clarify in this video on the problem with hierarchy. The dictionary defines the Greek root word archy as meaning rule or government. Hierarchy is an established system of rule, organized according to rank. Monarchies, patriarchies, oligarchies, aristocracies, corporatocracies, liberal and social democracies, and other hierarchical societies are manifestations of the construct of hierarchy, whether with few rulers or many. Hierarchy relies on the principle of authority, which is a social construct that empowers the ruler in a hierarchical relationship to give commands and make the subordinate obey under threat of violence. This coercive and controlling system is upheld by both.
So I don't know if anyone's familiar with the term Hierophant. Like if you use tarot cards, there's a Hierophant. Hierarchy originally, I believe, refers to specifically like a religious or a divine rulership or like tiered structure like that, like an order, right? Anarchy can't be against hierarchy categorically in the general sense of just having like one person in charge of another person, because you need that in any organizational structure. It seems to me generally that what anarchy is against is not hierarchy in sort of our modern ubiquitous sense. It's the unjust imposition of some tyrannical force over the whole, even at the level of just the imposition of a state structure. That's my understanding. I think talking about an opposition to hierarchy in this very general sense, I think that's mistaken. Now, maybe that's how it's talked about in the literature, but like it sounds silly to an audience, because you need, even transiently, right? Even if you have total equality, to complete some kind of task, you need someone directing, and other people following. And that's just kind of a fact. Any sort of complex organization requires that. And you can get that with an anarchistic principle, but when you say you're against hierarchy, the picture that goes into people's heads is we are all going to vote on literally every single breath we take, which is not what anarchy is about, but it gives that impression. Okay.
Violence and moral conditioning in order to keep subordinates passive in their position of subordination. It's important to clarify the distinction between authority, expertise, and force in order to avoid any confusion.
Good.
An architect might be real good at building houses, but that doesn't make them an authority. The expertise doesn't justify them as certain power over anyone.
Well, no, authority doesn't mean power. Authority very specifically doesn't mean power. Authority means, how to put this? Authority means something like someone to whom it is right to defer. Which is why you have like authorities on various subjects, like Walter Kaufmann is an authority on Friedrich Nietzsche. But he is not, for instance, in charge of Friedrich Nietzsche, if that makes sense.
Being an expert just means that a person is generally recognized as competent for a given task, while having authority is a social relationship based on power and status derived from a hierarchical position that manufactures an association between the position and competence.
Well, hang on though. The general recognition of expertise, it's not just general recognition. Like Jordan Peterson is not an expert just because he's more generally recognized. In fact, he's not an expert in very much at all. He's not more of an expert, say, than Michel Foucault, someone he spends no small amount of time slandering, who has probably much less of a fan base overall. Expertise is determined by that structure. It's part and parcel to it. The reason why we become experts is precisely because we facilitate a larger body, a larger network of experts that all fulfill different little roles. So we don't have to be self-reliant in a more general sense.
A person using force to prevent another person from being run over by traffic is not an example of authority either. Authority is an ongoing social relationship between people based on domination and submission, not an isolated act of force.
No, he's conflating authority with tyranny. This is wrong. This is wrong. I'm sorry. Look, even in an anarchist society, the decision made by the voting commune would be authoritative, and it could be enacted by force if one or several individuals decided to try and frustrate it against the will of the community, as it would have to be.
Nor is it authoritarian.
And that would be the case as sort of a dormant fact, even if you somehow managed to orchestrate it so that nobody would ever want to go against the consensus.
To use force to prevent authorities from establishing themselves. Organized resistance to attempts by oppressors to maintain or restore their position of authority is not itself oppressive. However, if former oppressors are just replaced with new ones who claim to be the vanguard of the people's liberation, that reversal of position does nothing to actually dissolve the oppressor-oppressed dynamic. I should also clarify that anarchism is not the opposition to unjustified hierarchies. It's the opposition to hierarchies, period. I mean, if someone thinks something is unjustified, no matter how...
Here's a question for you, Mr. Andrewism. Anarchism is not the opposition to unjustified hierarchies. It's the opposition to hierarchies generally. Why do you think so? Says who? Careful, don't point me to an authority. How do you fix on that? Like, at a certain point, like, there's going to be some kind of ordering that hooks and is maintained by some kind of pressure. And there will be relations of that which is authoritative and that which is not. So if I said that anarchy is actually an endorsement of all hierarchy, you would laugh at me justly. Because it's obviously not. Why is it obviously not? Because it's not up to me to just arbitrarily define anarchy as the opposite of what the authorities on the topic who developed the idea, who talk about it, who engage sort of in their communities in anarchistic discourse, etc., how they talk about it. Mine is secondary, or far below secondary, in fact. The reason he's bringing this up is because of child in the road examples. Okay, well maybe we'll see that coming up later.
How authoritarian their politics might otherwise be, of course they would oppose it. Using the unjustified hierarchies definition just obscures the aims of anarchy. Not to mention, it begs the question of who exactly is determining what hierarchies are and aren't justified.
Indeed, but if again, okay, so my initial point wasn't even as silly as I thought it was. Who's determining that this is in fact what anarchy is? You're doing the same thing. Like, you see the problem here. Like the proper use of terms and their meaning, that in itself is an example of a relationship of authority.
Another hierarchy? And who justified that one? People got this definition from Noam Chomsky, who introduced a lot of new folks to anarchism. But if you look at a lot of his positions, it becomes clear that he's not exactly the best source of knowledge on this subject. But Andrew, what about...
Not the best source of knowledge on this subject? Based on what? Like, there's so much not authoritarianism. You're relying so much on traditional notions of authority to make this point. Let me think about that for a second. Is that actually a contradiction? I like Andrewism, let's be fair here. So here's how I can kind of think we can salvage this a little bit. So right now we are in a state of affairs in which there need to be relations of authority and those who defer to authority. But maybe in an anarchistic society that just doesn't happen. I don't know how. That doesn't seem possible. But let's entertain that possibility that there's a threshold beyond which this seeming contradiction resolves itself. That doesn't work.
parenting? Isn't that the justified hierarchy? Quite frankly, no. I've spoken about how the form of parenting we're accustomed to is deeply patriarchal and deeply harmful in several videos at this point. Parenting is only hierarchical when parents attempt to subordinate their child, typically with the threat of violence. Anarchist parents are quite capable of taking care of and raising their children while treating them as autonomous individuals and not subordinate pieces of property or extensions of themselves to be molded into obedient automatons.
Well, hang on. Do they not force feed them when they refuse to eat? Do they not send them to bed? Do they not confine them to safe spaces in their house? Do they not disallow them from wandering wherever they may out into the wilderness? What are you talking about? They aren't autonomous individuals. They aren't treated like that. Primates don't treat their children as or they're young rather. Children, is that, do you call baby primates generally children? Whatever. They don't, they will like keep their children to heal, right? Like there's you have to. That's a part of our life cycle. You need to have the protection and guidance of more experienced organisms to a certain extent. You let them go eventually, but the current system of parenting, but what does he want to replace it with? Something else? Parenting requires authority. Well, he's arguing that it doesn't, except like even this picture is misleading. Because this picture shows a creature that can lift itself. But like a a child well below the age of 1 likely can't lift themselves, can't feed themselves, can't make rational decisions about what to eat, what not to eat, when not to eat, when to sleep, when not to sleep, where to go, where not to go. Walk to the cliff, climb the tree, touch the fire. Like, this just doesn't make sense.
Anarchic forms of parenting have actually existed for probably as long as humans have.
Alright, maybe we're going to be rebutted on this. Let's see.
And some cultures, like the Mbuti and the Adza, still practice it today. Once you start legitimizing authority,
You're not gonna elaborate on that? You're just gonna say it? Like, what does that mean? Do you mean like when they have a baby, they just leave it on the dirt to crawl around and eat bugs? Like, what do you mean? No, I'm pretty sure they pick up their kid, they put it in a bed, they tell it where to go, they tell it what to eat, they force it to eat if it won't, they force it to drink if it won't, if it gets sick, they force it to take medicine, etc., etc., etc. Obviously, they're not stupid. They care about their kids. You have to do that.
you've honestly lost the whole plot of anarchism. You give the authority power, and power has an appetite. Authoritarian power always seeks growth and expansion. Authoritarian power is a license to do harm, even if that wasn't your initial intention.
That's not inherently true. Authoritarian structures can be unambitious and conservative. Now, states, by contrast, and rationalizing bureaucratic structures, those are absolutely greedy and expansionist. Absolutely, by design. But what he's discussing here isn't that. I wonder if we're going to go into some James C. Scott territory, because there's some fudging that goes along here. James C. Scott engages in something about half as specific and careful as what Weber does, but it's still very good. James C. Scott is good, but sloppy. And shallow, but he puts his finger on things. So I have a feeling that's where we're going with this.
Hierarchical authority is inextricably linked with the marginalization and disempowerment of those without authority, which creates dependency and dullness among the oppressed and deprives the oppressors of their connection to their full humanity. In a hierarchical society, everyone loses to some degree.
What is full humanity? Like, is this like a eudaimonic notion? What does that mean, they're full humanity? They're still humans, are they not? This notion of full humanity comes out of a specific political structure in which there is a hierarchy established conceptually between activities that one can do in the wild and activities that one can do with the facilities of what we would call a state. Inaccurately, you should call it a polis, because a polis is something very specific from a state, but in common lingo we call it a state, or a city-state, or something garbage like that. St. Andrewism has done videos on the family. Maybe we'll look at one of those then after this, but I don't know. This is disappointing so far.
Even those at the top. But Andrew, what about Engels? Didn't he debunk anarchism in like 3 pages?
Did he? I didn't know about that.
He was just ignorant about the subject he was attempting to critique. He didn't grasp the anarchist conception of authority and acted as though organization is necessarily hierarchical and necessarily sacrifices each individual's autonomy.
It does, definitionally. Who's organizing? What is organized? Does everybody just spontaneously have the idea to go enter into the same organization at like whatever part of the process they happen to fall into, and nobody complains and nobody ever has like different ideas about what they'd prefer to do? Of course not. At some level, this has to happen. Like, obviously, this isn't like a rebuff to anarchism as a principle, but this conception of being just against any sort of organization with any sort of directivity is untenable. Like, no creatures in nature are able to do it. Maybe like coral can, but they don't do anything.
Engels, being an out-of-touch capitalist, believed workers needed to be obedient, even under socialism, because industry requires authority. The reality is that workers need to exercise their autonomy and work out problems they face in the job themselves in order to do their jobs effectively, which is why work-to-rule practices, where workers do exactly what the bosses tell them to do, regardless of the consequences, are so effective. Anarchists don't oppose cooperation, coordination.
Depending on what it is. It depends on what it is. If you're talking about people on an assembly line, no. You're talking about, yeah, it depends on what it is. When you get a certain, like, level of hyper-specialization, it's not always the case. And typically people like managers and floor managers and stuff like that, they are the ones who exercise that level of autonomy, and the workers are actually expected just to do what they are told to do. Now, often they don't, and often they solve those problems for themselves, and great, I guess, but, like, that's... Like, I know that there are studies that show something to this effect, but I think this is an overly generalized account. Because it's not simply ubiquitously the case that all kinds of workers need to do that, because that's not true. In a lot of professions, they actually do need to just obey. In a lot of old professions, they need to just obey, like sailing. Things like that.
Mutual agreement or organization. None of those things require authority. The question is how organizations are organized, and especially how decisions are made. It's not enough to oppose mere flavors of authority.
How decisions, but decisions are, the decision is authoritative. That's what makes it the decision. That's why there's a moment when the decision has been made. That's authority. And even if everybody has to abide equally by the decision, as equals, they're still under the thumb of the decision, and if they choose to go against it, like... Thank you, White Owl Wizard, I really appreciate that. Have a good night yourself.
Authority, like some leftists do. We need to oppose the principle of authority itself. We need to dismantle all ladders of status and control, because the problem isn't just a specific type or set of rulers, it's the whole thing. But Andrew, how will we protect ourselves from bad people? By resisting all forms of hierarchical authority.
How?
Even if you think people are so
Individually? How? How? How?
abusive, the safest course of action is to prevent those sorts of people from being elevated to positions of power that provide them access to more victims.
How do you intend to do this? Without organizing, without directives, without plans that are able to commit people to carrying them out. How? Andrew, how? You gotta, like think about this. I'm sure you have, but, like, it's not here.
If you believe human nature is naturally irresponsible, selfish, and greedy, then we should shift to a new political and economic system that does not encourage and enable those negative tendencies. If humanity is so flawed, then we cannot make an exception for the rulers, exploiters, and oppressors. Power spoils and power corrupts, both rulers and ruled. Free from the stupefying and servile constraints
Why do you say that? Like, why do you think so? Give a reason. You gotta give a reason, man. You can't just say stuff. You gotta, like, give specific reasons.
of hierarchy, billions will be empowered to experiment and transform society in the ways they see fit to bring out their individual potentials. Rather than political indifference, there will be a renaissance of political involvement. Rather than apathy, there will be a flourish of empathy and solidarity. Rather than elitism and uniformity, we would see the benefits of equality in bringing forth independent action and critical thinking.
Why do you think so? Critical thinking. That involves educational structures. That involves like curriculums and standards and training. That involves like, hierarchical arrangements. You don't get high levels of technical expertise requiring grueling amounts of training by people doing what they will by inclination in the moment. We don't want to do these things, generally.
Self-determination and free association are what humanity needs to enrich itself. All power to all the people. Peace. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment.
Oh, that was lazy, man. That was lazy. You didn't explain anything. You just said stuff. You didn't justify your points. Come on, you're better than this. It's a shame there's not, like, a bibliography, because I wish I had, like, someone specific to respond to here. Because, like, at least then I could go, oh, okay, well, he's drawing on this conception of authority. And then I can respond with a video, like, okay, here's this conception of authority. Let's run with this. Does it work? Does it hold water? What does it actually entail for the rest of what he's saying? But he doesn't do this, so... Damn it, man. Come on. I should talk to Andrewism again. Oh, he's gotten up there? He's at 72,000... Yeah, 72,000 subscribers. Pretty good. I like Andrew. I don't dislike him at all. This was wanting, though. Alright. Last video of the night. We have an honorable mention in this one. Apparently. The Clout Human Centipede. How political streamer cliques work. Take it away, Grumpy.
I mean, at the end of the day, every single channel on Twitch is either a Vorsh or a Destiny sycophant. Except Hassan, who defies the spectrum by hating both of those people. There's two human centipedes. Originally, there was a human centipede with Destiny at the head, and he would shit his clout into the people behind him. But then there was a breakup between Destiny and Vorsh, who was behind him, who was previously enthusiastically swallowing Destiny's fecal matter. And they had to be severed. The lips that were molded to the asshole had to be cut. And then they split, and they each made their own centipedes. So now we have the Destiny human centipede, and Destiny shits his clout into the mouths of like center-right to right-wing people.
Not to put too fine a point on it, but... And I hate to pull the Destiny move here, but it actually kind of works in this case. You are mentioning these people, which is primarily why people are clicking on this to look at this video. Aren't you at, like, some lower segment of the centipede yourself? Which doesn't make you a hypocrite, because you're allowed to describe the process. Even a process you're taking part in, even a process you're criticizing. But it's... You're going to do this in such gross ways, it's a little bit... You know? Like, glass houses kind of thing.
And then we have the Vorsh human centipede. And Vorsh shits his clout into the mouths of centrist people who pretend to be left-wing. And in return, each of these human centipede leaders gets allegiance from the people behind them. So the people behind them basically always try to make sure to stick to whatever is acceptable to the people ahead of them. And if they ever like dare to criticize someone at the head, they always do it in like very soft terms, right? They have to pretend that these people are serious intellectuals. They have to like be like, oh, I respect your opinion. You're such a great intellectual.
I don't think that's necessarily true. I see a lot of bridge burning on both ends. Now, often it's because people are just being stupid or they're being snake-like, but the point, though, is there's very little actual deference being shown. I don't see anybody really talking to Destiny or Vosh as a follower. Maybe Xanderhall a little while ago when he was complaining about... Or not complaining, was trying to get Destiny to make up with Vosh, but... I don't know. I don't really see this attitude of deference. Like who actually hasn't, who in Vosh's following hasn't fought Vosh at this point in a fairly brutal fashion? Except Xanderhal. Who hasn't, I'm sorry, Xanderhal. Who hasn't done this to Destiny yet? You know? Like, I don't see it. Like, the dynamic he's talking about isn't insane. Like, it's a plausible explanation of a relationship that could very well take place. I just don't see it in these cases. Or maybe it's outdated, or maybe I'm not paying as much attention, but it doesn't seem obvious to me.
But this very minor thing, I disagree on it. And in exchange for this, the centipede's head shit a little bit of their audience via fecal matter into the mouths of people behind them, and they guzzle it.
You don't need to say via fecal matter. We get the idea. They shit the audience.
And then they shit it to those who are less fortunate sycophants than them, and it goes on and on and on until the very end, where you have the people like aristocracy. Oh yeah, and President Sunday, he's another one of the people who are at the very end of the centipede.
What?
Who are just like surviving off like 50th hand fecal matter, all to get like just a tiny little bit of the audience from the person at the head. And that's basically what this is. Like,
Well, hang on. Do I show deference to Vosh? I don't show deference to Vosh. Most of my interactions, and the vast majority of my interactions, are me fighting with him. I had like one little bit because there was a spurious set of claims being made against him in a very cynically made and promulgated video by a cretin, where I took apart those claims, and it happened to be in defense of Vosh in that case, but that would have been for anybody, and I've done so for other people. I did immediately so afterwards for Professor Flowers against Vosh. Like, I don't know, man. Like, ugh.
cottage industry that's being fed by a human centipede. And the head of the centipede is Vorsh. It's basically a bunch of people who define themselves off what people who have more followers and a bigger audience than them do, and just try to reaffirm the opinions, or at very best mildly criticize, very mildly, so as to stay in their good graces, the people whose fecal matter they rely on to have an...
Didn't you jump into the defense of Keffels when she was making unfounded accusations of pedophilia against other content creators? Didn't you, like, fall into line like that? You know? You don't strike me as the type, generally. I could be wrong, but that looked a little weird to me. It looked a little like you were falling in with friends who had larger audiences. I could be wrong. Sunday, you're overthinking. He just wants to fantasize about eating poop. Hey, look, we're progressives, okay? Don't diss people for their rightful proclivities. He does have a nice beard.
an audience themselves. So it's the clout human centipede. That's how you get people like Lonerbox who literally have a Vorsh voice line as their fucking Twitch subscription notification. This is the most pathetic thing you'll ever see. You couldn't be more of an ass kisser. You couldn't be more of a shit eater than that. Every new streamer or content creator, like 90% of them, try to latch on to the Destiny or Vorsh human centipede. Like, their ambition is basically to have their mouths sewn to the asshole of someone who's already like 100 fucking spots down in the secondhand fecal matter. Actually, in this case, it's 100-hand fecal matter. Imagine being one of those people. Imagine if you were them. Imagine how pathetic you would be.
He's talking about you guys, just a heads up. You're the fecal matter in this analogy.
Imagine being someone who
consuming,
who has to like pretend that Vorsh is a serious intellectual and repeat whatever he says in order to like maybe aspire.
That was perfect.
To make a meager income off Patreon.
Yeah, why is he grouping Lonerbox into this? Like, Lonerbox does exactly the same thing that Bad Empanada 2 does, just he's not a shithead on the side. He makes video essays about politics and sometimes about, like, political streamers and about the stuff they do. Da-da-da-da-da-da. And he does a good job of it. And then he engages in debates. He does exactly the same thing Bad Empanada does. exactly the same. And he builds his audience in the same way. He just gets the nicer part of that audience. He doesn't go out of his way to harass people and call them things in private and get himself banned from Twitter somehow 20 some odd times a year. Like, Lonerbox is great, minus his video on ethics, which is terrible. Yeah, well, we can't all be philosophy nerds. We can, and you should be ashamed of yourself if you're not, but the consensus is we can't, which I disagree with.
5 years down the line. That's these people. It's very sad. And even worse than that, the pathetic losers who are the audience who will defend every single Centipede member no matter what, because the
Communism
Centipede
is
head
based-
dictates that.
The audience doesn't even defend Vosh. Like, certainly not Destiny. Destiny, I don't know which one gets more support from their audience, to be honest. This is just wrong. If anything, it seems like it's in the low to mid tier that you have audiences that are very much in support of streamers. It's not higher up at all, because there's no incentive to, unless you're like this falls apart under just a tiny amount of scrutiny. An audience doesn't have any particular reason to be generally deferential to a large streamer if they start to displease or disappoint them. And there's so many people vying for their position. It's actually more advantageous to fight with them than to be friends with them. You grow more from fighting with them than from being friends with them. So I actually did get a lot of my audience from criticizing Vosh. Because there are a lot of people who hate Vosh. And that's I think fairly common. Yeah, Vosh's own audience criticizes him a lot. Like, generally, I only see like a large amount of deference to a streamer when they're like sort of between my size and like 15K or so. Especially when they have pretenses to some kind of like professional skill set or expertise. Because people sort of swallow that and they're like, they're yeah, rah. Right?
They must. Now that is a very sad existence, if you ask me. And yeah, now Destiny's Centipede, like Destiny has like fucking Lauren Southern and Nick Fuentes as in any Centipede now. He's getting darker and darker. I mean, I guess it's not that surprising because everyone like on like the Vorsh Centipede has gone further and further right as time goes by, and Destiny has too. And he started off even further right than them, so it's not really that much of a surprise.
Well, that was dumb. Come on, George. You're smarter than this. Like, I mean, like, what? Like, this whole video is just about Vosh and Destiny. And people are clicking on it because it's about Vosh and Destiny. You're doing exactly what every single person in their orbit does. It's like, no shit. People click on things that talk about stuff that other people are talking about because they recognize it and it's relevant to them. Like, yeah. Yeah, and then people opportunistically follow that because it grows their channels and makes them money and allows them to live a fairly comfortable and interesting lifestyle and have an interesting job. Like, yeah, obviously. Great. And there's a lot of problems associated with that because a lot of people do that and are very toxic and irresponsible in the process of doing so. Yeah. I don't think you get really much out of this metaphor except the ability to refer to the audience as fecal matter. Which is basically all this did, is, yeah. Dumb. Anyways, I'm gonna go to bed. This has been a rough day. I'm tired. Actually, it hasn't been a rough day. It's been an okay day, but I hate debates. That wasn't even a debate. I don't know what that was. That was that was like fencing with a battering ram. All right. Have a good night, everyone. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Hopefully there will be a new video essay up in the next couple of days. Stuff happened. You all know what the stuff was. It was this awful Destiny encounter and all the fallout from that. We are back to the interesting stuff, finally. So, have a good night, everyone. Take care.